Hello and welcome back. Today in module number 3, we are going to talk about review of module 1 and 2 key terms. We are going to talk about, again, basic about color theory. And we are going to talk about vector graphics, and specifically we're going to see Adobe Illustrator, which is one of the more famous application to use or to create vector Illustrator. Then the last part is going to be a short review of quiz 1, and I hope that in the end you will not panic. So the idea here is that, again, this is introduction. I will try to make it the quiz as easy as possible. The objective is not to hammer you, but on the other hand, just give you a sense of what the direction. So let's start. A textbook, I don't have the book in front of me, lay out for us 13 principles that encoded the relationship of theta. And he talks about them in a sense that it's really important for us to have what does it means when we are going to start using those principles in order for us to generate our visualization. So one of the first principle is the idea of comparing. So there is no interaction in more than comparing values and patterns in the data. Apple versus orange. This is the basic principle that our textbooks talk about. Or in a graph, when we have line graph, and so the red line represents something different from the blue line. And so those components are part of the discussion that we need to embed it in order for us to have the idea. Another process or another thing that he talks most often is sorting, which is the process of arranging the data into meaningful order so you can analyze it more efficient. So you want to have a list, you want to have a compiled list that is accessible to you, and you understand from the highest level to the lowest level, and what does it encounter when we are talking about colors or icons. We will talk about colors very soon. So in this sense, this is again how he sees the sorting of the data based on high or low versus what those states have and those the green state have compared to the gray state that doesn't have it. Adding variables is also part of our visual analytics terminology, and we're always looking for ways to add variables to make more interesting attributes to our visual analytics display. So the more you will do that, the better you are. Example, again, it's not only the dot in black, but we have lines in red, green and blue, which add another dimension to the data. If it was without the lines, we will see that and say, okay, we have only dots here. What is the story? How can we tell a more interesting story to our visual analytics? Another way is to highlight. And again, the highlight is make it more possible to the viewers. It's not you, it's not me, but the viewer, like your parents or your uncle or anyone who is not had a course in visualization that wants you to tell him a story or her a story using the visualization. So the highlights is part of it. The creation of this graphic is done with ggplot2, which we will cover in this class. Another process that we need to talk and we will talk or use this term quite often in this class, is data aggregation, which is the process of information is gathered to express the summary form or ability to process it in a statistical analysis. And the idea here is, again, how do we aggregate the data such as age, professional, or income in a particular groups? How do we do that? And this is part of your visual storytelling that you will need to do. Another way that he talks about quite often is re-expression. That's save the day, the strength of bend the relationship between one to another in order for us to see if there is a working model that we can describe. We are always looking for a better way to fit a model, our statistical analysis, or the model that we use in our statistical analysis. I will talk about statistics in the next module. I'll try to make it more coherent and more straightforward, but this is the way for us to rethink again when we are using visualization in order for us to do that. And one of the things that we always do is, how can we use the visualization to, again, highlight things that we want to emphasize? And he calls it re-visualizing. And again, this is a better understanding of the data, what the re-visualization can help us see in the data. Okay, so this is basic terminology that I covered. I want you to keep it in your back of your mind because we are going to go over that. But we need to talk about colors because colors is a very important part of our terminology, how we express things and how to do that. Yes, we can look at art and learn about art, but this is not the objective. So what is color? First of all, color is the aspect of things that is caused by different quality of light that reflect on them in order for us to do that. So you see colors, basically you see light. So when a light shines on an object, some colors bounce off and reflect it differently. So our eyes see only colors that bounce or reflect on. This is something that we need to make sure that we understand. So light gives us the use of a rainbow. But the light of the rainbow, usually we see not the whole spectrum of the colors that is in the rainbow, because we have at least 5 or 6 different colors in the rainbow. And we have a combination that does not allow us to isolate the colors. So this is the thing about the rainbow. So how do we see colors? Colors is always a way that we describe the object based on the way that reflects or emits our light. So we can see different colors because part of the eye entail on the sensor that we have, or the bounds of what the eye consists of, in order for us to do that. So basically we have lenses and we see the lenses, and the lenses give us the reflection of the light that goes on it in order for us to do that. We also have the idea of Newton. Newton in 1666 talked about the color circle. But nowadays, with the use of computers and the use of technology, the color scale or circle become bigger and bigger. So in the past, they used to see only limited number of colors. Nowadays, we see much more, and we can generate more colors than ever before. So we have the red, the orange, the yellow, the green, and all of that is part of the circle that we see colors. But we have also classification of colors. What does it mean, classification? We like to classify colors in order for us to have better sense or better authority of how do we use it. We have primarily colors, which is red, yellow, and blue, which is always the foundation of our color pattern that we use, and all other colors are basically based on those three colors: the blue, the red, and the yellow. Secondary colors include green, orange, and purple, and those are colors formed by the mix of the three components of the colors. So when we are talking about green, it's basically a combination between the yellow and the blue. And by doing that, or the orange is a combination between the red and the yellow. By doing that and thinking about that will make us more coherent of how we shade or color our visual analytics display. So in this sense, we have primarily colors and we have secondary colors that give us ideas of or structure how to outline our visual analytics. I put that just to make you feel comfortable, because red and yellow give us orange, blue and yellow give us green, blue and red give us purple. That's the whole idea. This is something that I want you to have in your back on your mind when you're going to start using colors in your visual analytics. We have other forms that allowed us to use colors and use secondary colors in order for us to express or to illustrate something else. And we have complementary colors, which is pair of colors which placed next to each other, they create a stronger contrast for those two colors. And example, green and red, yellow and purple, blue and orange. You see the contrast that they provide, and by doing that, they give us more, again, the contrast if we are looking for. We also have classification of colors, part of the wheel, and they are sitting in each other's with regard to three colors that are next to each other on the wheel, the color wheel. And basically, it gives us a sense what is those components consist of. And so those are part of how we classify those colors, and if we want to apply them, how do we do that? One of the things that is really important to me, because as you know, I'm not pure Americans. I was born here, but I was brought up in Tel Aviv, Israel. And we are in Israel, we talk about warm colors versus cold colors, which means that we usually use warm colors as our foundation to our arguments. In compared to people, my friend in Denmark, which is considered to be cold country, who uses cold colors. So the difference is the pattern or the schema of colors that are often used compared to him. So this is the idea of cold versus warm colors, and how do we apply that into it. The warm colors, a lot of artists use that. They try to apply the red, the orange, and the yellow in order for them to get something out of it, compared to the cold color that usually consists of blue, green, and they are prevailed or try to give more relaxed or calm sense of what we are trying to achieve. Ways to alter the colors. We have ways for us to trim or shade or tuning the colors in order for us to make a statement. Painting is something called pastel, which is simplify any color with adding white to it. So basically, we are adding white to make it no such strong statement out of it. Shading is the opposite, adding black to it in order for it to make a stronger statement. And in this case, this is how we do that. So again, white versus black with regard to colors. And again, I did not talk about the importance of white versus black in the schema of things of colors, which is also part of our discussion with regard to color theory. Toning is the increase of black and white, which is the gray, if you combine them together to make a gray tone, which means to calm it down, to use it. Example, in the first version of Microsoft Office, they use a lot of toning gray color to calm all the user down, because they did not want user to get frustrated with Office. I'm still am frustrated with the color, without. So this is the idea of tuning down, using the gray as a way for us not to press or not to stress people with that regard. Now we are going to talk about terms that often been used in visualization and has different tone to it. Chromatic, and now we are going to use monochromatic, which is using the same tone again, and it usually applied to art. But the thing is, nowadays, when we have large set of data and we like to display that, we usually use that type of settings using the same colors by tuning or shading them into a single color, but giving them different shade in order for us to tell a story out of it. We also can use that in the sense of two or more colors to tell a story. And again, I use in this PowerPoint presentation, I use more artistic example, but I'm sure that we will encounter that when we will start producing our own visualization, that some of you will like that type of toning in order for them to do that. We also can use without colors, if you see as colors as too traumatic to the user. And some users or some infographic people use that type of numeric or this type of coloring in order for them to tell that. We also use natural colors, and natural colors usually it's warm, which means it's not warm in the sense of giving you a sense of warm, but a sense of calm down or settle down, and does not outline or press the eye to pay attention to it. So it's the way for us to give something that is warm and does not call for our attention. So this is called the natural colors. It's usually consists of brown, black, gray, and white, and some people likes to use it. Back to our subject. And in computer graphics, we usually talks about two types of graphics, vector versus raster. I will talk today about the vector, and I will describe it, and we will use Adobe Illustrator because Adobe Illustrator is a vector application, which means it produces vector graphics. So what is a vector graphics? Graphic that is based on mathematical formula that define the line, the shade, and the grade inside those graphics. So we can create 3D, 2Ds, we can create points, path, and shape, and this is part of Adobe Illustrator. This is the power of Adobe Illustrator. Example, the original image in Adobe Illustrator is quite nice, but if we resize it, the image, using Adobe Illustrator, we will be able to see all the lines or all the shape that is included. but the shape that make up the image can also be isolated or be taken another part. That's why when we are using or creating a logo or using advertising, usually the graphic designer use Illustrator to create that, so they will be able to press to resize the logo or reshape the logo in any form they want, from web to advertising or to any other form. So the use of vector graphics usually consists of scale, which means the size used to allowed us to do flow charts, and CAD programming is that one of the programs, the leading programs in designing houses and anything that entail. And logos, as I said, the scale, the ability to lose quality if we are looking for the mass production of the logo, and so on and so on. So illustrating and art clips usually use vector graphic as a production line. Graphics on the web, again, small size files that are quickly to load time again and again. Okay, the advantage is the scalability of the vector and ability to do that, and ability to take this type of image and to re-edit it, to spread or distinct the object. You need to have the format of the file itself that was created in Illustrator, or more pronounced or more solid software, because otherwise you will not be able to do that. When you download the image from the web, such as GIF or JPEG, you cannot play with a vector outline because it's already blocked. It's like PDF for images. You cannot play with that. So it blocks for us the way to do that. And small file size and ability to do that. The disadvantage, again, lower quality than raster images. They do not support many colors, as we talked about. Not good for photographical images, and limited type of effect that can be applied. Common files, again, Adobe Illustrator is the way for us to look at that, and we usually use or create a file in Adobe Illustrator called EPS, which is encrypted PostScript, which is again produced by Adobe. This is their own file. They have the ability to generate that, and this is how they apply that. And usually when we are looking at different files, we're looking at the common vector file, which is SVG, which is also a standard to the web and part of how they worked. So what is vector? How do we apply that? Usually it is the direction of an arrow in the direction the vector, and the length of the of the line that we are generating. When we are talking about the analytic aspect of the vector, we usually talk about real number, example C, and we can multiply the vector by C, and by multiplying it by again another dimension in order for us to do that. So if we are looking at the background of Illustrator, you will see that in this sense, if we will look at the code, it will consist of V, 2V, minus 2V in order for them to the directions, the negative numbers, the real numbers, and so on. So adding numbers is basically a Paragon law that allowed us to calculate that. So using Illustrator does not apply or give you a sense that you are applying a mathematical law to it, but if you think about that, the way for you to work is, again, we are applying laws that usually apply. We have the U, you have the V, which is usually consists of the X axis and the y-axis, and this is how we apply, and we can have a combination, which is again how to see that, and we looked at how to see the components and how to apply to it with that regard. So we can write it as first component, second component, and apply that into the formula. But again, the magnitude and the vector has its own thing that we in Adobe Illustrator do not see. So let's introduce you to the Adobe Illustrator. In real life or in real environment, Adobe Illustrator, you need to buy the Adobe package, which is quite expensive, and I understand. So in the assignment that you have with regard to Adobe Illustrator, you're going to take what you have created in Google Fusion table, and you're going to add to it the Adobe Illustrator. You're going to create a text to it, you're going to create lines, you're going to tell more story, not only just copy and paste capture the image from Google Fusion table, but also to tell a story beyond that using Adobe Illustrator or using vector graphics into it. So this is a good video about that. I also posted quite a lot of links about Adobe Illustrator. I highly recommend that you listen to it. Again, it's not a requirement, but it's a good essence or good background that you will be able to understand where we're going to learn about more advanced analytic tools. How do they do that? What application or what type of vector they are able to produce? Some of them are unable to do that. So I want you to be aware of that. And if your boss, the future boss, will say to you, hey, it's a great visualization you create from the analysis, but I want to have some headlines or some higher quality of the image, Adobe Illustrator is a good way to do that. So you're going to start with a new page or a new set. You're going to see the tools that it gives you. There's a lot of videos to do that, and I highly recommend to do that. Okay, last part of this long module, and I'm going to talk about the quiz. In this module, you're going to have your first quiz. Yay! And the quiz is basically consists of multiple choice questions. So your first question you're going to see, I'm not going to change it, is that going back to my notes, and I said that visual analytics has some overlapping goals and techniques that combine information, and I let you choose. This is a really easy question. The goal is that I see the first quiz just a warm-up, just to make sure that you understand what I'm saying and I see what you are saying, and to make sure that we are communicate in the same length and the same meaning. So this is the goal of the quiz. If someone did not do well on the quiz number 1, don't worry. There is quiz number 2 and 3, and I will take off the lowest grade. So please, the quiz is just you to start focusing, start understanding what we're trying to achieve in order to do that. So this is it for this week. I hope you're going to be warm, and I hope the weather will be getting back to normal with hot weather. But until then, have a good week and enjoy.